Today is Sunday. It is September 21st. It's around 3:43 p.m. Right now, my New York Jets are kind of losing to San Francisco at 26-13. Unfortunately, I do not have every streaming channel known to man, so I cannot watch this game today. But I did what I could to follow them. Ain't looking too good. Turning it off. Coming over to this. I'm just getting over being a little sick this week, so hopefully I can be understood better than usual. I've got my Irish remedy here, little Buffalo Trace today. It should help me out a little bit. And we'll see what happens, all right? This might be a long one today, so bear with me. Essentially, I've gone through a little challenge I gave myself. We have the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Okay, the author of this is a Stephen J. Schneider. It is published by Barron's. And this one took me years to achieve. Granted, not always active. I would have spouts of knocking off a bunch of movies and then stop for a while and come back up again. But I've been working on it for a while. But needless to say, in August of 2025, I finished this. This edition here is a 2011 edition. Therefore, it includes movies from practically the dawn of cinema up through about 2010. In 2010, you'll get some highlights like Black Swan, hence the cover, Inception, The King's Speech, and The Social Network. Okay, these are all 2010 films if you want to go back in your Wayback Machine and say, Jesus Christmas, were they only 15 years ago? Or were they actually 15 years ago? My Lord. Initially, I was going to try to do this video just all without notes. Kind of riff it off in my head. I was going to wing it and see if I can get through it all, but then I realized that there's just a few highlights I wanted to make sure that I hit along the way. And just to make sure I got them all and didn't leave any aside, I forced myself to sit down, write a bunch of notes that I have above the screen right now. And it's going to help me along a little bit. I would say, though, I wish I was into making these videos back when I started to go through this book. Because then I could have had a new video for each and every movie along the way. And had the journey a little bit more memorialized than just doing here like a nice little high sum up of the whole experience that I did. I mean, that alone would add 1,000 videos to the channel. It probably would have ingrained the movies more into the long-term memory than is currently housed within my mind right now. But I know that from the start, from the original get-go, that would have been a pain in the ass. Because there was that whole listing of movies that I had already seen. So I would have had to, have a backlog. I would have had to catch up from the beginning. It would have been a lot to do from the start. So, just a couple of notes. First off, this video here will be more of the journey and how I found some of these movies than about the entries, the 1001 movies themselves. Although I will highlight some specific ones that were difficult to find. And I'm looking at you, Abel Gantz's Napoleon. And some that I really had to dig around to find. And secondly, due to a personal boycott, one of the movies on this list I intentionally did not see. So it's really the 1,000 movies watched instead of 1,001. But I'll tell you more about that at the end. So let's begin, shall we? Why did I do this? Why did I decide to sit around and watch 1,001 movies, or maybe 800 or so, because I already saw a bunch in my past? And this, for a small part, is where I need to put a dig into my brother-in-law. And don't worry, it's nothing I haven't said to him face-to-face before or directly, so it's not like I'm going behind his back. My brother-in-law is an actor by desire. And one day, he wanted to host a meal at his apartment for his family. And being an apartment, there's only so many rooms you can congregate in. So I found my way over to the den with my drink, and I saw this book here on the table. And I leafed through a little bit, kind of intriguing, bunch of things I never heard of before, bunch of things I know I'd seen before, just trying to see how many have I gone through of 1001 that he has this big book for. And I'll put it right out there right now. Common thoughts are made by anyone I've ever talked to about going through this project, saying, "Oh, I've seen most of these already, I'm sure." And I will say, if you have that thought, trust me, you have not. "Oh, but I love movies. I'm a bit of a cinephile." Trust me, you haven't come close to making a dent in this book, no matter how many you've seen. But I'll put more on that later on. Fast forward from, the dinner at the apartment a few years. Let's say it's 2015 or 2016. I saw that he had another addition to the book. And I asked him, I was like, "Did you watch all of the 1001 from the first book?" He's like, nah, but, this one's got newer movies, so I wanted to see what those were. Which, as an answer, just kind of blew my mind. Because that means to just add 5 more years to this book, you have to watch you'd have to add about 20 or so movies that weren't on this older edition of the book from 4 or 5 years prior. Which means you have to kick those other movies off the list. If you're going to make room for 20 more, 20 are now no longer must-see movies. And I kind of had a problem with that a little bit. Because I'm like, wait, so now these movies are no longer must-see before you die? Because we had to put new ones on the list at the end? And I told them, they're going to drop a new edition of this book probably every year. It's just the nature of book sales. You release a new copy every single year. Hell, the Guinness Book of World Records comes out every single year. Are you just going to keep on buying new books every year they come out just to see what else now makes the list? And with a $35 price tag and it being 1,000 pages long, it's not feasible to do that every year, monetarily or space on the shelf wise. So I told him, I was like, "Listen, let me have your older book. Maybe I'll go through these movies one day. And just so you know, if you give this to me, you're not getting it back." And he agreed. So, challenge accepted. So now, it's one of those things where, how do you even go about doing this? So the book is actually in here chronologically. It starts in 1900 or whatever up through 2010. Back in the 1900 whatever, which happens to be 1902, you get the first silent film ever released. It's called A Trip to the Moon. And, even by today's standards, it's a pretty decent little sci-fi story. Very fantastical. And if you're in my generation, you would recognize this movie almost shot for shot. It was remade in the Smashing Pumpkins video for the song Tonight, Tonight. And in 1902, it's the only entry from that year. Right after that goes 1903 to The Great Train Robbery. And that's heralded as the earliest commercial success of any cinematic feature ever. And then it skips ahead. And now you're in 1915. And you get to Birth of a Nation, almost like a KKK film back then, and Les Vampires. But again, it's jumping through the years in the very first few pages. And then you get up to 1916. So 1916 is just about where it starts giving you multiple entries in a year, much like it does in a year-by-year breakout for the remainder of the book. Okay? Because more and more films are being released and produced back then, you have a lot vying for attention. So, beginning in 1916, so you have the period from 2010 to 1916. It's 94 years of films to go through. And that breaks down to roughly about 10 or 11 films per year. And thankfully, there's a checklist in the beginning of the book. Okay, one I've already checked off everything. But you get to actually keep track of everything happening of what you've seen. And you can just knock it off in a very, very good way. And it came in handy. Because when I got to the end, or so I thought, I went back through the checklist. I was like, wait a minute. I missed one. How the hell did I miss one? I was being so methodical. So I'll say, damn you, zu früh, zu spät, which translates to too early, too late. It's a 1982 German film, which unfortunately was a horrible swan song for this whole project. Which, as a little aside, I have a fun story about trying to get this one. You see, as I did with a whole bunch of other entries, I went on the internet and I searched for it. Where can I find it? Especially, where can I find it in the English language or in English subtitles? And I only found it available at one source that I could find pretty fast. There's a website called Alexander Street. It's a part of Clarivate. But to get a membership, you almost have to be like a teacher or a librarian to get it. And I'm not either. So I reached out to them in the email, just hoping I can get a hold of somebody and tell them a sob story, right? I wanted to con my way to get into there and just get a free trial. And with a free trial, I get to watch the one movie, tell them, hey, no thank you, and walk away. So I emailed them. I let them know that I worked for a business, an actual investment firm, and we like to engage our staff in staff events. And they had a section in there for documentaries. So my story was, listen, with today's headlines, we're hearing about ICE raids, we're hearing about immigration in America, there's race issues with different cultures, and they're occurring daily. Not to mention just the poor in America. So some of the documentaries I saw, I said, listen, I think I want to show... So I said, our company has a theater in their main building, which, by the way, we don't. So it seats about 40, 50 people. I was like, I think if I can show a movie a week or every couple weeks, once a month, whatever the case may be, I can actually show these topics in contemporary society. And hopefully it would stimulate conversation among coworkers in a way that it might be able to remove some of the taboo natures that some people don't want to talk about this stuff at work. And people might be very sensitive about. So my hope was I'll do these test screenings, check them out, get employee feedback on it, and if everything's great, I can bring the feedback to, the money people in our company. And if they're happy with the engagement of the employees, they might go on for a subscription. I'm sorry, I think it's a pretty decent story. And they called me back, and I had this wonderful conversation with this one woman. And I got past that first interview. She loved the idea. And I was like, this is going to work. Until I get to Clarivate's money people. She passed me along to two others, hoping to sell me a membership. And we're going back and forth. And at first, one of them cites, hey, you probably would be more interested in the anthropology collection that we have. Which, needless to say, the one movie I'm looking for is not part of the anthropology collection. I told him, I was like, listen, I just want a short trial period so I can try this out, see if it's feasible for my company, and then we'll buy the subscription. And unfortunately, they denied my claim. I was like, damn, I thought it was going to work. That would have been great, Colin. However, luckily for me, I actually was able to find one online. So at the end of the day, I didn't need them or my charade after all. But it was worth a try. And like I said, a very plausible story. I thought for a salesperson, they would have said, okay, give them a quick trial for a week, maybe 2 weeks, see what happens, get something out of it. What's the worst thing that can happen for them if someone watches their freaking website free for a week or two? But I digress. Going back to what I was saying, the checklist actually helps you out a lot. Especially because if the film is a foreign film, it lists it as the foreign name and the English name. And next to all the name of the titles, there was the page number it came from. So, when you watch one foreign film, you're able to check off 2 at one time as you go along. Which brings me to an interesting point. I mentioned above that people are just compelled to say, well, I've seen 1,001 movies before. I must have seen the whole book. And here's where that's false thinking. I'm sorry, one more time. Here's where that is false thinking. While you may have seen 1,001 movies before, let's say you've seen 40 Marvel movies in your life, right? Number one, not one of them is on this list. Firstly, because this edition only goes to 2010. Possibly only 3 movies were out by that point. And 2, while you may have enjoyed them, they may not constitute movies you must see before you die. Secondly, since the book spans almost 100 years, the majority of movies that a typical person would see would be maybe in the last 30 years, let's say. I'll go 40 just for the hell of it, okay? There's a whole span of time that just might be uninteresting to you, or for most people. A lot of contemporary watchers out there. So, from what this book's trying to do, you're dropping off decades of possibilities. Third, and I kind of alluded to this a little earlier before, notice that I did not say the 1001 English language movies to watch. The whole world makes movies. And you might have sat through a bunch of French movies, Czech movies, Chinese movies, hell, even some silent movies, but never the amount that are actually in these pages. Hell, I took on this project, and there are a ton of movies I had to go hunt for. So the odds that you'd be able to just pick it up randomly to watch would be rare. In fact, one of these movies I actually had to go buy on eBay in VHS. And that kind of reminds me of a project I had done years and years ago. You see, I love lists, okay? And one day, I found the Lost book list. If you remember Lost, the TV show, I was a huge fan of Lost, by the way. Huge, huge, huge. Love talking to people the day after a new episode of just theories and what's going on, yada, yada. Obviously, that was before the show ended. No one talks about it after the show ended because it was disappointing. But there is a Lost book list out there. Primarily a listing of all the books that are ever showcased in the TV show. Because every single episode of that show either has a book in it or a book reference of some sort, which actually is pretty interesting for a person who loves books like I do. And I noticed when I looked at the list, I actually did read a fair amount of them. So I was like, again, challenge accepted. I'm going to read this whole list. Okay? I was able to piece together a whole bunch from the library or the library audio catalog, and I was absorbing them one by one and enjoying them, and then trying to figure out how it fit into certain episodes, because some of them were blatant, some of them were not. Some of them might have just been like, if you ever saw the show, it was the book Sawyer was reading on the beach when people came up to him. And there's other small nuances, like there was an underwater Dharma initiative base called The Looking Glass. Okay, that goes to Alice's Adventures in the Looking Glass. Tie-in. So, the library was able to knock out a whole ton for me, even doing interlibrary loans, was able to knock out even more. But then, just to complete the list, I actually had to go to Amazon and buy the last few. The last 3 definitely were Walker Percy's Lancelot, Vladimir Nabokov's Laughter in the Dark, and Adolfo Boyo Cesaris, The Invention of Moral. And most importantly, going through this whole list, it spawned my interest in creating audiobooks. Okay? Kind of a pay it forward for anyone else who was going to do the exact same thing. They wanted to go through the Lost Book list. Hey, they ran out of audiobooks to listen to. So I went out there, and one of the ones I loved that did not have an audiobook that I could find at the time was Survivors of the Chancellor by Jules Verne. And I made that my very first audiobook recording ever. You know, it was kind of like my version of The Bridge Builder for someone else making the journey after me to come across easier. So that segue was basically about, in order to finish that book list, I had to go buy the last 3 or so books to finish it out. To help me get to the end of this 1001 movie list, I actually had to go buy a VHS movie. And this I'm going to segue onto a little conversation regarding all the streaming services that are out there. Based on my last point, I have to say, you know, I still own a VCR. In fact, 2 of them. And when I hear that people are proud when they cut the cord on cable, something I had done years and years ago as well, just know sometimes that with all the various streaming services that you buy, you most likely are paying more for cable than on average. Okay? And people are very, very common to say, you know, everything's available in streaming nowadays. And I'll have to say, not even close. Okay? There's something you may say about newer releases, because everyone can get their hand on a new release to rent it through a certain site. And even then, you have... I don't know how to say this. Even if you have streaming services, you might not have the sub-program within it in order to watch it. I mean, unless you want to rent every single movie or show that comes out there, in which case, see my earlier comment on the cost of streaming, not everything's just available at your fingertips at all times. And I have a prime example for this. Okay? I was a fan, back at the turn of the century, of a show called Boston Public when it aired. It's a TV show about a public school in Boston. The teachers within, back and forth with the students, the faculty, the parents, everything, right? Really out there sometimes in their scenarios. But it is unavailable on either streaming or DVD for that matter. So unless you get an illegal copy somewhere, it's just not available for anyone to see any longer. And that's a show that ran from 2000 to 2006. So it's very simple to say, hey, everything's out there. And if it's not, who cares about it? No, there's shows you might want to see. Someone will reference, hey, let me check it out one day. That show itself, Boston Public, a lot of stars are in that. So I had to encounter that during my journey of 1001 movies. So how did I do it? Well, for starters, like I mentioned before, I had to check off all the movies I had seen. You know, I was like, cool, that should knock off a ton of these, right? And it did. Like I said, mainly from 2010 back on down to like 1975. I was able to cross out a ton of them in the book. Still missing some along the way, but, you know, if you're like me, you've seen Star Wars, The Godfather, Ghostbusters, hell, even Ghost, Akira, When Harry Met Sally, The Shawshank Redemption, and even Schindler's List. So sure, you knock out a bunch by doing just that. You might even have gone through a classics kick like I've done from time to time. And now you're crossing off maybe some older ones. You can cross off Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, maybe even a Charlie Chaplin film here or there, Babette's Feast, or an Ingvar Bergman film. And when that's done, when you're all said and done, you maybe knocked off like 4, at tops, 500 movies. Probably less. I said, I've seen a lot of movies, but a ton of the movies I've seen ain't on here. You know, you might like horror movies. The obvious 1 or 2 are going to be on here. All the others will not be. So I knew I had a lot more to go. Where do I go from here? Well, now it's just clearly just a matter of availability. Okay? You start flipping back and forth. and say what else is available at my fingertips. Maybe you can just open up like a Amazon Prime and just see what's there on the Prime Video for free. Hey, is that on the list? Is that on the list? You can check it that way. Maybe start from 2010 and work your way backwards, because like I said before, contemporary films are easier to find than older ones. So I started knocking them off, like I said, using Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever streaming sites I actually have available to me now. And that kept me busy for a few years just by doing it in that fashion. But then I made my way from 2010 all the way back down to 2003 again. I'm in the front of the book. And that was just on a cursory glance there, and I wasn't like stopping every single one and doing an investigation. I was like, oh, is it available? No, next, and kept page by page went through. I wasn't deep diving through the whole thing. Just see what I can knock off here and there. But then I got to the front of the book. And I was like, well, let me reverse the course. Let me start old and work my way forward. And I would go through that same thing. Start from the old, go to the new, knock out a few along the way. Hey, I'm going to go back and forth in this book hundreds of times probably, try to look for everything. I don't care if I miss one now. I'll find it later on. And when I got to the 2010 again, I was like, all right, let me try to knock it out in big sections. Like, let me try to go back and really knock out all the silent films. Ones I couldn't have like on my phone while I was working, kind of a thing. So I started a further scrutiny of the internet. See what's available, what can I find, really looking for it. That's where you find a bunch of Buster Keaton films that happen to be on the list. Oh, along the way, one I heartily enjoyed, a silent film, is one called Haxan. It's an early silent film about witches. I figure it's a true gem to behold. One I can actually recommend to anyone who enjoys witches or maybe even documentaries on it. Haxan. Really cool movie. Wouldn't have ever found it without doing this list. Now, one thing that I did find, one thing I had done, just because I could be a little OCD from time to time, very organizational, was I got to start using things like binder clips and rubber bands. Okay? And this worked pretty well, because it let me squeeze in the book. So, for instance, if I found out that, say, through here, okay, this is 1995. I've seen all the movies in the book from 1995 through 2010. I might just take the rubber band and throw it on that page. Okay? I'm sequestering off a whole section of the book. I know that it doesn't have to be open for me anymore. God, this book is ratty. So it was just a thing I had done to help me out there. And the binder clips helped me out in the opposite direction. So I started out very, very early and would just say, okay, let me take a whole bunch of these things here, clip it on there, boom. And I'll just keep making the clip fatter and fatter as I go along. So as I'm doing this, I know that this is the section I'm working on in total, but this half is done from this page to the end, and this page to the beginning is already clipped together. So I actually knew what the latest and the earliest one I had to knock out was. And again, it's just something I did, like I said. People have their own little foibles and OCD. But this one helped me out a lot. And it helped me to say, all right, just ignore all those pages. They're clipped together or they're rubber banded up there. Just a little tip. If you find it useful, that's great. If you think I'm useless doing that kind of thing, whatever. And that worked well for me, even up through the end. Okay? And it just allowed me to concentrate. And at times, like I said, it would tell me, really search for the one that's causing you from moving the rubber band from here to there. What can I do? It's that one movie I'm looking for. And for a while, that one movie in both the oldest and the youngest was a bitch to find. 2 examples. On the newest, in 1995, there was a Farsi movie, an Iranian movie, called, I'll try to get this right, Bankanake Safid, which is the white balloon. Okay? Took a long while to find this. Found it out there a bunch of times that was in the foreign language, but did not have English subtitles. Okay? And sometimes those movies that were difficult to find, when I did my search, I found a website. I can't find it now. I can't remember what it was. The URL was something like MHWU4 blah blah blah, whatever else. And it would come up often as I'm doing my searches. Because there are times I would just watch these movies when I was at the plasma center. I would just have my earbud in, watch a movie for 45 minutes, pumping away my plasma, and be done. It helped me knock out two birds with one stone. But that website, whatever the URL happens to be, it had full movies available. But every time you clicked on the screen, anywhere, it would jump to some kind of like porn site. Or something along those natures. Something pretty depraved. So if you had to hit the pause button or the rewind button, boop, it would shoot you over to there. It would auto jump to one of those sites. Probably got malware in there somewhere, maybe even viruses if you think about it. But I kind of got to the point of try not to ever touch the screen. If I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch it for the full hour and a half or maybe 45 minutes of it, and I'll figure out the rest later on. But those kind of sites did help me out in knocking this thing out there. They had a ton of these movies out there, too. So, but that was the thing. I eventually kept on searching for that one alone, because as you've seen, too, in any streaming site you might be a member of, the movies flip around pretty often. There's even sites now, or even blurbs you'll see on Yahoo Trending, being like, look what's leaving Netflix at the end of the month. Look what's leaving this channel at the end of the month. Go watch it now before it leaves. Because they go, others come in. So even though I'm going back and forth in the book, I always keep checking those movies, especially the end ones, the oldest and the newest I haven't gotten to. Can I find it? Can I find it? Can I find it? Luckily, because I was searching so damn hard, I found The White Balloon, watched it, enjoyed it, and then was able to say, all right, cross that one off, and I moved that rubber band pretty significantly from where the hell it was to somewhere further along the way. And it was shocking how many full movies, even foreign movies with subtitles, you can find out there on Vimeo or Dailymotion. It was ridiculous sometimes. But basically, I would always type in, I would do a search on Google and be like, movie name, sometimes followed by the year if the name is a little bit too common, and say watch now. So you say Ghostbusters, watch now, or Ghostbusters 1984, watch now. And it would pop up. So I put White Balloon 1995, watch now. And if I couldn't find anything in that search, I'd go to the foreign name. Badkonake Safid, watch now, or 1995, watch now. And browse around until I found something. Because like I said, sometimes you'll find the film, but it won't have any subtitles for you. Had the same issue on the older side. 1927. Abel Gance made a 5-hour silent film called Napoleon. Okay? And people call it an epic silent film. The film is lauded for its use of camera work for, at its time. The camera work just being revolutionary. No pun intended. And I'd gotten through all the films from the beginning of the book through like 1950 already done. But I couldn't move that binder clip away from 1927 until I got this one taken care of. For a while, I thought it was going to be the last movie on my list when I was all said and done. And then I learned, the thing about this movie was, it's available on DVD, just not in America, not our region of DVD player. If you haven't learned about this, DVDs, the technology was made in such a way that only certain areas of the country could see a disc within that area. So if America is region 1, our DVD players can handle that. But if you're in Japan and get a DVD, it might be region 3, 4, 5. that will not play on a Region 1. So I couldn't get a DVD and just buy it and put it in my DVD player. So I had to resort to some less ethical means to obtain this one. I bought a European DVD player. I'm sorry, the European DVD. I bought an all-region DVD player, because those things actually exist. Got them both shipped to me. Once they came in, I hooked it up, watched all 5 hours of the silent film that night. Then returned everything the next day and said it didn't work. Not proud of myself for doing that, but I got it done. And all the while this was happening, I was kind of getting my hopes up a little bit, because Netflix was in conversations with, I think, the French Conservationalist Society or something like that, in an attempt to restore the film from its old celluloid into something that's more, not coherent, but, constant throughout the 5 hours. I would keep my eye on articles for this for months, if not years, trying to see what progress is being made. Because at one point it was like, oh, we're going to have this available to everyone in 2022. And then it wasn't. So, I would just keep like, hey, this will show up on Netflix eventually, and I'll knock it off my list. But it never happened. It might happen one day, but it never happened. I'll tell you what, the online reviews, people are just gaga over this film. You should see all the heralding remarks that are being made about Abel Gance's Napoleon. So, I'll say, if you have the opportunity and the patience to sit through a 5-hour silent film, give it a shot if you have the capability of doing so. Now, speaking of Netflix, one thing that was able to make me knock off a ton of movies on this list was Netflix. And I know, I do not mean the streaming. I'm talking the DVD plan. It turns out Netflix has a huge inventory of foreign films in their library. So I put together a watch list of like about 150 films or so that they had available. Literally one day just being bored, going through my list and going through the thing. And in 2022, they started coming in the mail. I was on the 2 DVD plan, I think it was. So that would mean I can watch one, send it back, and I'm watching the second one while the shipping courier is taking care of the back and forth of it. So I was able to knock out like 2 or 3 a week by having them constantly in and out and in and out. And I had some success there for a long time. And then it was announced Netflix was ending their DVD program. It would end on September 29th, 2023. And here I am thinking I'm so close to knocking out so much of this library. But, as luck would have it, it was perfect timing. I was able to complete my entire watch list just a week before the service shut down. I got every last drop from Netflix's DVD program. And it helped me make the progress to 1001 movies that much easier. It was almost serendipity. Or, like this horrible author I've been reviewing recently on this channel, synchronicity. And I'll tell you what, it's kind of amazing what you find when you do a project like this. Things that you just didn't know before. Especially things like remade movies. Okay? Movies that came from original sources. Now, nowadays, we see reboots and reissuances of old movies all the frickin' time. But when you're younger, and you don't know where movies came from originally, you might realize that other movies you like now were older movies. Okay? Here's a few examples. Firstly, 1999. Mel Gibson did the movie Payback. It's not on the list here. Okay. By the way, I did find this movie Payback to be a pretty fun movie. Most people don't like this movie, but end of the day, it's essentially a remake. See, 30 years prior, in 1967, Lee Marvey did the film Point Blank. Overall, it's the same revenge story of a man. Basically, he's a criminal, and he and his partner do a take, and they're supposed to split it half, 50-50, but then the other guy steals his half, and he uses that whole amount to buy into some criminal organization or a syndicate or the outfit, whatever the hell you want to call it. And now the original guy wants his half back. Okay? Mel Gibson, it's the exact same movie. He just adds a little Mel Gibson to it, makes it more humorous, and it's a good movie. But I liked watching the original, even though I kind of knew it was going to happen. It was fun to see the original. Second example here. Now I'm going to go into Stephen King for a little bit. In 2004, Stephen King had a 13-episode TV show called Kingdom Hospital. Now, I was a Stephen King fan once upon a time, but got out of favor quick after high school, maybe during college or something like that. But by the time the show came out, I didn't care. So I ended up not watching Kingdom Hospital. But it turns out Kingdom Hospital is his adaptation of a 1994 through 1997 Danish TV show called Rigget, or Rigget, I don't know how the pronunciation goes, which is known as Kingdom. Well, I believe with the word R-I-G-E-T, it looks more like realm than kingdom does, but that's all the same. And it's a horror-esque series that takes place in a hospital in a neurological ward, which is in the midst of some kind of supernatural phenomenon going on there. And the second season of Rigget got kind of hokey, whatever else, but I stuck it out to the end. I wouldn't put it very high on anyone's watch list, but the author of this book loves the aesthetics that were used in the TV show. And it blended a distinctive look of like earlier films. And it had an almost like mockumentary irony of 1990s soaps in a way. If you're wondering, by the way, why it even made it to the list, it's those kind of quirky aspects of the show's production that the author said, this is a must-see, you got to check it out for yourself. So it was very fun to go through and see, oh, wait a minute, these are the original versions of things I know later on. Okay? And it kind of, even the new ones, they're just kind of like, it breaks down a new version of an old story where it's the same overall overarching storyline, but done from a different perspective or different point of view, which makes it unique. For instance, there's a few examples I have here for you. It's like when you realize, if you ever go watch that film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Okay, essentially, it's a comical farce about Homer's classic Greek, The Odyssey. It's the exact same story, just done quirky and more contemporary and comedy. Go to like rom-coms. 10 Things I Hate About You. Julia Stiles. It's essentially a teen comedy version of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. It's the exact same story. Just twisted a little bit enough to make it seem new. And to get it for a different audience. And then you can look at Cruel Intentions. Bunch of pretty people in like 1990s or early 2000s. Just a modernized version of the period piece, Dangerous Liaisons. Same exact story. So while the newer versions can add a flair of showing you a fresh take on the old tale, it does have the unfortunate side effect of adding fuel to the fire of those who just love to proclaim that Hollywood has no new stories to tell. Sometimes you don't have to. So, where does that bring me now, besides at 44 minutes? Well, that is one of the things that keeps reoccurring in this book. That's important to realize. What is it that constitutes a must-see? Many of the examples in this book, the entries in the book, are a matter of context. Here's, for example, Citizen Kane. Arguably a truly fantastic movie that was made back in 1941. Orson Welles, a truly remarkable voice to listen to, if in anything he does. But what makes it a must-see? Besides, like I said before, being arguably a great story and a fantastically told tale. And why do I repeat arguably? Because some people just have a problem with it. Much like some people just have a problem with Atlas Shrugged. They just do. Like they're supposed to. But in Citizen Kane, cinematographically, I probably didn't say the word right, cinematographically, okay. Behind the camera, he broke into the mainstream doing some amazing camera work. The separate elements that were combined in a given shot. Forced perspectives. Blending the use of like miniatures into a shot. Or certain use of camera angles. You know, I saw one time on YouTube, they broke down one scene, a conversation that happens in Citizen Kane, right? You got Kane and some other guy. And the man comes into Kane, and he's kind of like aggressive in his manner, like, you know, you can't do this, don't do this, stop doing this, whatever it happens to be. And while he comes in, Kane is just sitting down. And you're led to believe that the man has the greater force, because even on the screen, he's shot from being above Kane. He's standing and Kane is sitting. But Kane is just calm and focused, even though he's seated. And as the conversation continues, Kane starts to rebut and starts to overtake him forcefully with his words. And you can see the man kind of shrink down and take his own seat. And by the end of the scene, Kane is on his feet. And now he's forcefully talking down to the seated man. So just in the camera shot of this, you can almost feel the dynamics shift from A and B to B and A in the midst of just one conversation. So they say, cinematically, that's just amazing. Now, Orson Welles, when he made Citizen Kane, he didn't create that. That wasn't his thing. In fact, he himself had said that he took the imagery and shots sometimes from John Ford. You know, once Orson Welles was asked, who are the 3 greatest film directors of all time? And without skipping a beat, he said, John Ford, John Ford, and John Ford. Now, by today's standards, those cinema tricks may be commonplace. But back then, it was revolutionary in its movie making. So things like that is what makes Citizen Kane a must-see, according to the author for this list. And other things that appear throughout the course of the 1001 movies are the first time X. Okay? The first time CGI morphing was used, which if I'm not mistaken was the movie The Abyss. Now, they used it, and shortly thereafter, Michael Jackson used it in his video for the song Black or White, where at the end he keeps morphing people from one culture or gender to another throughout the end of it. And The Abyss is on this list. Now, in my opinion, it's not just for the reason of the CGI using of morphing. The Abyss is a great movie. But it is a reason that it may be here. Other ones, for the first time, might be the first time Woody Allen made a movie. It's on the list. The first time a movie was in color. That goes on the list. The first time they did a movie that had animation and real-life characters collaborating on screen. That makes the list. And it goes further. The first time Poland got recognized in maybe the Academy Awards or something like that for having a great movie. Or Thailand. Or Azerbaijan. Just a host of reasons of why this one takes the cake for this reason or another. Bam. Put it on the list. Pardon me. Like I said, I was sick last week. Now, don't allow me to mislead you in any way, shape, or form. from a groundbreaking perspective, there's a reason to show reverence to a first-time movie, okay? And it takes a special eye to watch this and enjoy it. From a layman enjoyability standard, you can fall into a so what aspect of viewing this. From a 2025 perspective, you can go back and see the first movie ever to have a robot in it. Okay, and typically people talk about Metropolis in being the first movie that had a robot. Okay, 1927 silent film. Much like I mentioned earlier today on this video about the Smashing Pumpkins having, Journey to the Moon in their video. Metropolis, Queen, used that for their video Radio Gaga. I mean, it's hysterical to watch. But again, when you go back to a Metropolis and you see the first chances a robot is on screen in a movie, you can either say, wow, because it's good nostalgia. Or you can say, who gives a fudge? I've seen the Terminator. So, it's all in the beholder. Really it is. Now, one note I will say. There were moments when I'm watching some of these movies that even I'm like, why am I watching this? And that's embedded throughout the movies. Okay? For example, and I'm afraid I cannot recall the actual movie this comes from, but I'll tell you what happened in it. Okay? First, it was one of those foreign films I talked about. And the scene in particular was the people on screen had to leave their home and they're going to go to the bar that's in town. And there was a real-time shot of the people leaving their home, which is on the outskirts of town, and walking down the road to the town bar. And they leave their home, and they go down a long, muddy road from where they live to get to the main part of town. And it's an uninterrupted cut of them walking, and you follow them the entire walk. And there's not even any dialogue. Just grunted efforts and trudging steps to get from point A to point B. And for me, I mean, there's scenes like that I was able to fast forward through. Because I was noticing, to me, there was nothing to watch there. And because I had the subtitles on, I would see if there was some dialogue along the way, and there wasn't. So literally, it was like eating up a lot of minutes just having them walk from point A to point B. Now granted, it was an uninterrupted cut. Those can be very impressive to see. But walking, come on. Now, the worst entry in the entire book, by the way, 1967, Wavelength. This is 45 minutes of a camera that starts on the near side of an empty room and just appears to single uninterrupted cut. It wasn't, but it seems that way, as it slowly zooms forward to the far side of the room. And as it slowly enhances over 45 minutes, there's a sound of a sine wave vibrating at a certain pitch the whole time, uninterrupted, going up octaves. And by the way, it started low at 50 cycles per whatever in a tone and went up to 25,000 cycles. Which, by the way, for a person with tinnitus, was annoying as fuck. And that was it. That's all it was. It was 45 minutes of a slow zoom shot. At times, the visual would change. It goes through a form of filter, like a negative or a rainbowish kind of thing, whatever else. But it just maintained 45 minutes to cross a room. And the annoying sounds. I'm sure cinema makers can give you a 4-hour dissertation on why this might be the most magical moment in the history of film. But not I. I mean, there was another one, had the earmarks of an Asian porn film, for the most part. Definitely did not need to see that one. Alright, I mean, what I'll say is, there you have it. I mean, the big question in everyone's mind is, usually, was it worth it? I mean, kind of. Like I said, I like lists. Oh, by the way, the Jets lost 29-27. They came back a little bit. But it's been interesting to watch. Okay, sorry. I mean, this list here just kind of dropped in my lap. So, I did enjoy seeing a total bunch of these films and exploring some of the history that went behind in the filmmaking from even going back God knows how long. Not to mention, even though you might have seen a lot of these stories today, you're seeing original versions of them back then and how they got around it. I mean, I had a true joy seeing some of these. And then I wanted to shoot myself in the head watching others. So, again, some were fun to go through and some were just a slug through just to check off something on the list. But like that boring one with the long walk, I had the sense I could see when I'm watching a movie, I think this is going to be a panorama for like 20 minutes. And it might be. And I can fast forward, looking on the bottom, seeing if I see any words pop up, then I'll jump back. But I got through it. You know what I mean? But it was truly amazing doing the whole project of where can I even find these? There are some Reddits out there and subreddits galore of people asking, where did you find this movie? I need that one to finish my list as well. And the community doing their best to point them in the proper direction. And I think that was one of the most amazing parts about going through this, that whole finding the movies in question. I mean, I spoke of it earlier, but I'll try to say it in full here as much as I can. Where did I find these? Like I said, first, knock off the movies I've already seen. Then there were some obvious ones that I knew I could find pretty fast, but they were just movies that I personally passed on along the way. But now that they're on the list, I need to go watch it. Like the original movie for MASH. I never watched the TV show, never felt I had a need to watch the movie. But now I was. Or like Woody Allen films. I really hadn't seen a Woody Allen film. But there's like 4 of them at least that were in this list. Did there need to be 4 of them on the list? I don't think so, but they were there. But again, they're contemporary enough where even if I say they're between the 60s and the 80s, whatever else, you can find them a little easier than, say, the 1910 movie. So, what did I see? Knock off any other ones. And then it's online. Everything's an online search. Just even the search alone. And I would say, I would do movie title, watch now, and something would pop up. In fact, the website Just Watch came up pretty often to say, you can find it there, find it there. And like I said, next was that Netflix DVD plan. Knocked out a whole ton for me. Didn't even have to go search for other ones, because I was already going through the list 2 or 3 a week. I didn't have to watch a 4th and a 5th one. I could just do it that way. And the internet in general, there's a lot of sites available that have movies on them. You just need to sit down and do the searches for each movie one by one. And for me, I would search for one, couldn't find it, move on, I'll try again another day. Okay, like I said, there's 1,000 movies on this list, so you're bound to go through the list more than once. But the sites that really help me out is, like I said before, Vimeo, Dailymotion, YouTube, Clarivate. I even got some subscriptions. I would pick up like a 1-month subscription. At the very end of my thing, I think I had the book lying on right here on my computer stand for probably a year. And there was like 5 or 6 movies I could not find. Okay? But I found a website called Eastern European Movies. And I joined it for 1 month. Because I knocked out 2 of the last 5 movies right away. 2 Polish movies. One called Man of Marble. One called Man of Iron. Oh, another really, really good resource. The Criterion Collection. I got myself a subscription to Criterion Collection and knocked out a ton of movies through them. There's a whole bunch in this list that were at Criterion. Oh, and I even found another one. I almost forgot about this too. Depending upon what your library is or where you're located, a lot of libraries join together for a site called Canopy with a K. Kanopy. And as long as you have a library card and your library is a part of the service, you get on for free. And through Canopy, I think you get like 7 free movies to watch in a month. And I was able to knock out a whole ton of those, especially during the plasma thing, just by watching them through Canopy. So, very, very good resource for you. And like I said, at the very, very end, when you get down to only those last few, kind of like I did with the Lost Book List, as I mentioned above, you just gotta buy like a VHS for it sometimes. I did that, again, one of the last 5 was a movie called No Fear, No Die. It's a 1990 French film. It surrounds 2 black gentlemen on their training of roosters for underground cockfighting. And it encounters, amongst the story, exploitations of illegals, power dynamics, and some other issues of race. So I now own this movie, which with not much use for it any longer. So at the end of the day, I did it. 1,001 movies you must watch before you die. I guess I can die now. I can simply add it to my list of accomplishments and bring it up in conversation. I mean, it started as a voluminous task, but I followed it through to the end. So, yippee, right? Oh, on that note, I said we'll get back to it at the end. There's my one exception. So you could say, well, technically, you didn't finish this. And that would be true. And which one did I skip? And yes, I did skip it. Well, you gotta remember, this is going back decades. This one director, after he did Terminator and Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, True Lies, James Cameron was on quite the roll as a director and writer. And then all of a sudden he switches gears. He decides to do a romantic period piece out of the blue. And that picture, Titanic. So because of this change of tactic, I personally did a boycott on Titanic. Now, obviously, my boycott didn't do a damn thing. Still won Best Picture, made a boatload of money, pun intended, and spawned a really annoying song from one of the divas of its time. But I made myself a decision. I will never watch Titanic, and I stuck to my guns. That either makes me a truly stubborn person or a very resilient person. I'll let you decide. So yes, there technically is still one movie I have not seen. But it's one I can practically find anywhere. And I'm sure, if tit comes for tat, one day, my wife, who owns the DVD, will make a bet with me. And if I lose, that will be my price. To watch Titanic. So, there you have it. This video has been longer than an hour. I hope you enjoy this little journey with me. Like I said, I've been working on this for over 10 years, at least. Okay? It was an interesting obstacle to get through. But now I'm glad to have it done in my rear view. I mean, you see lists like this all over the place. But, like I said, did the Lost Book List, enjoyed doing that. Did this one, I did have some fun doing this. But the good thing is, now this big tome of a book is no longer sitting on my computer desk. I can throw it up there somewhere on my bookshelf that someone will notice and make a comment about it. So, hopefully I got something more for you pretty soon. In the meantime, thank you for listening for this long. Click all those buttons, you know what people say, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.